There's a moment when the heart stops beating, and something extraordinary happens that modern medicine cannot measure. The soul doesn't vanish. It begins the most sacred journey of all. What if everything you've been taught about death has kept you from understanding the most beautiful transition of existence? You've felt it, haven't you? That hollow ache when someone you love becomes a photograph. The way silence screams in rooms they used to fill. The desperate bargaining with a universe that seems deaf to your pleas. You carry the weight of unfinished conversations, words unsaid, forgiveness withheld until it was too late. This isn't just grief. It's the soul recognizing its own exile from the mystery it once knew intimately. Tonight, we're not studying death as observers. We're preparing for the most intimate journey consciousness can take. This isn't about conquering fear. It's about remembering what your soul knew before birth and will remember again after the final breath. Death is not abandonment by life. It's life finally taking off its mask. She sat by her grandmother's bedside, watching the shallow rise and fall of breath, and realized she had no words for what was happening. In the corner of the room, a photograph from the wedding album seemed to whisper, "We live in a culture that speaks death's name in whispers, as if silence could keep the reaper at bay." Picture a bird born in a cage, told that the sky beyond the bars is dangerous emptiness. We've made death the ultimate taboo, the conversation we postpone until postponing becomes impossible. Jung wrote that the psyche naturally prepares for death throughout the second half of life, through dreams that grow more luminous, attachments that naturally loosen, and an increasing pull toward transcendent meaning. Yet we resist this organic wisdom, clinging to youth like drowning swimmers grasping at waves. Ancient cultures understood what we've forgotten. Dying was called going forth by day in Egypt, a return to light rather than descent into darkness. The Tibetans spend years rehearsing death through meditation, viewing it as the ultimate awakening rather than the ultimate defeat. You felt it in your chest, haven't you? That flutter of panic when you truly consider your own mortality. Not the abstract idea, but the visceral recognition that this body, this personality, this entire world you've constructed, all of it temporary as morning mist. But what if that flutter isn't fear of death? What if it's your soul's excitement, recognizing the approaching doorway home? Tonight, before sleep claims you, sit quietly and breathe with the awareness that each exhalation is practice for the final one. Don't seek to overcome this recognition. Welcome it. Place your hand on your heart and feel the rhythm that connects you to every human who has ever lived and died. You're not separate from the great mystery. You're part of its eternal dance. The soul that befriends its own mortality discovers it was never truly alive until it stopped fearing death. The moment arrives like dawn, quietly, then all at once. Imagine honey slowly separating from the comb, or morning mist lifting from a lake. The silver cord that mystics describe, that energetic tether between soul and flesh, stretches, thins, and finally releases with the gentleness of exhaled breath. A woman stands in a hospital corridor, watching machines fall silent around her father's bed, and feels something warm hovering just above his chest. "He's still here," she whispers, not understanding that she's witnessing the soul's first taste of freedom. Dr. Raymond Moody's research reveals that consciousness doesn't simply vanish when the brain stops functioning. Near-death experiencers report floating above their bodies, observing medical procedures with impossible accuracy, moving through realms of light that feel more real than physical existence ever did. The separation isn't violent. It's recognition, like a butterfly finally understanding it was never meant to remain a caterpillar. The soul realizes it was always destined for dimensions beyond flesh and bone. Have you ever awakened from deep sleep with the momentary confusion of not knowing where or who you were? That disorientation is your soul's memory of its natural state, consciousness unbound by physical form. Every night, you practice the same process your soul will one day complete permanently. As you drift towards sleep tonight, Consciously feel your awareness withdrawing from your fingertips, then your limbs, then settling in the center of your chest. This is the map your soul will follow when flesh can no longer contain its luminous essence. Practice this gentle letting go, its preparation for the ultimate release. The body grows cold, but the soul has never been warmer, finally free to remember what it felt like before it forgot how to fly. Sarah was 8 minutes clinically dead when she found herself floating above the operating table like a curious angel watching her own resurrection. She could see the crown of the doctor's head, the coffee stain on the nurse's scrubs, conversations happening 3 rooms away. When consciousness returned to her body, she wept, not from gratitude for survival, but from homesickness for the vastness she'd been forced to leave. Picture a drop of ocean water suddenly remembering it was always part of the infinite sea. This is the soul's first recognition. Individuality was never imprisonment. It was simply a temporary game of hide-and-seek with eternity. Dr. Pim van Lommel's longitudinal studies reveal that those with the deepest near-death experiences return transformed, less afraid of death, more connected to universal love, as if they'd been given a preview of humanity's ultimate destination. The tunnel of light isn't movement through space, but consciousness expanding beyond the narrow bandwidth of physical perception. Jung, after his own near-death experience, wrote of feeling like a fragment of existence finally returning to wholeness, the individual ego revealed as a small wave in an infinite ocean of consciousness. You've touched this vastness in moments of profound beauty, haven't you? Standing before a sunset that stopped time, holding a newborn whose eyes seem to hold ancient wisdom, or in that space between sleep and waking where you feel larger than your skin. These aren't rare mystical experiences. They're previews of your soul's natural state. Close your eyes and imagine your awareness expanding beyond the boundaries of your body. Feel consciousness stretching to fill the room, then the building, then flowing out to touch the stars. This expansiveness you're sensing, this is what awaits when the walls of flesh finally crumble. The moment you think you're dying is often the moment you become more alive than you've ever been. In the space between worlds, time moves like honey through winter air. The soul hovers in familiar spaces. The kitchen where breakfast was made for 40 years, the garden where roses were planted with such hope. Maria's family swears they feel her presence differently, her daughter sensing warmth on her left shoulder, exactly where Maria's hand used to rest, her husband finding his missing wedding ring placed carefully on his pillow. Imagine a house slowly being emptied of its most beloved belongings. The soul observes its own wake with mixture of curiosity and compassion, surprised by grief from people who seemed distant in life, saddened by absences of those whose presence was expected. Tibetan Buddhist teachings describe these first 7 days as crucial for the soul's orientation. Ancient Jewish tradition observes Shiva, keeping mirrors covered and candles burning, recognizing this threshold period when consciousness remains accessible to the living. Dr. Erlinda Haraldson's research documents consistent patterns. After-death communications peak during the first week, as if the soul uses this time to offer comfort and closure to those still bound by flesh. You've felt this liminal space yourself, those moments after loss when you catch yourself setting an extra place at the table or reaching for the phone to call someone whose number will never again be answered. Your intuition recognizes what your mind struggles to accept. Love creates connections that transcend physical presence. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the weight of absence, as if the air itself remembers who used to breathe there? Light a candle for someone who has died recently. Speak to them as if they're listening, because they likely are. Tell them it's safe to let go, that their work here is beautifully complete. Your words become bridges of light across the threshold between dimensions. The wake becomes a double ceremony, a goodbye for the living and a gentle birth for the departing soul. Robert's rage at his wife's death became so intense he would pound walls and shout her name at empty rooms. One night she appeared in his dream looking exhausted, weighed down by invisible chains that seemed to be made of his own desperation. "Your anger is keeping me tethered," she whispered. "I need you to let me fly." Picture emotions as colors in the soul's expanded awareness. Grief appears like heavy gray rain, while loving memories shine like golden threads connecting hearts across dimensions. The departed consciousness feels every vibration of those left behind, like a hypersensitive antenna tuned to the frequency of human hearts. Dr. Julie Beischel's mediumship research reveals that departed souls consistently communicate urgent messages about the living's need to release guilt, stop self-blame, and transform possessive grief into liberating love. Jung noted that the unconscious of the living and dead remain interconnected. Our unprocessed emotions continue influencing their spiritual journey. The most powerful gift the living can offer the departed is conscious, intentional release. Not forgetting or ceasing to love, but transforming desperate attachment into wings of blessing. Notice the difference in your body when you remember a departed loved one with grateful celebration versus desperate longing. Your chest knows the distinction, and so does their soul. Are you loving them toward freedom, or binding them with beautiful chains of possessive devotion? Write a letter to someone who has died, telling them everything your heart carries: love, gratitude, forgiveness, and most importantly, permission to be completely free. Burn the letter at sunset and imagine the smoke carrying your blessing across the veil between worlds. The more completely you release someone into death, the more available they become to you in life. Like a traveler finally reaching a mountaintop and gazing back at the entire path traveled, the soul enters what mystics call the healing interval. Michael found himself reliving conversations from 30 years past, but this time feeling exactly what his words had meant to others. The casual cruelty that created actual wounds, but also the unexpected healing his genuine compliments had brought to strangers he'd barely noticed. Picture watching your entire life as a movie, where you can simultaneously be every character. The soul experiences every emotion it caused others to feel, not as punishment, but as expansion into divine empathy. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes this as the life review bardo, where consciousness feels the consequences of all actions while simultaneously experiencing infinite compassion for its human struggles. Hindu tradition recognizes this as natural purification that occurs when awareness expands beyond ego limitations. Near-death experiences report reviews characterized not by external judgment, but by overwhelming understanding and self-compassion, seeing human flaws and mistakes while falling in love with the courage it took to incarnate at all. Imagine experiencing your last week from everyone else's perspective, feeling what your presence, words, and energy communicated beyond your conscious intentions. This glimpse of how your consciousness affects other consciousness, this is what the soul discovers, but wrapped in infinite forgiveness rather than human judgment. Before sleep each night this week, place your hand on your heart and ask, if I died tonight, what would my soul feel when experiencing how I affected everyone I encountered today? Let this awareness guide tomorrow's choices, not as burden, but as invitation to love more consciously. The soul sees every mistake as teacher, every wound as doorway, every imperfection as evidence of the magnificent courage it took to risk loving in human form. Imagine reality as vast orchestra where different instruments represent levels of consciousness. The soul doesn't choose its section based on worthiness, but on which music it has learned to play. Sarah's grandfather, a simple farmer who loved animals with wordless tenderness, found himself in infinite meadows, filled with every creature he'd ever tended, all radiating perfect health and gratitude. Margaret discovered herself in what felt like an eternal school, surrounded by souls who had also struggled with forgiveness during earthly life. Together they explored compassion through direct experience rather than intellectual study, learning happening through being rather than thinking. Quantum physics suggests reality operates on multiple dimensions simultaneously. The soul's transition might be less mystical movement and more dimensional shift, consciousness changing frequencies like a radio tuning to different stations, broadcasting simultaneously in the same space. Esoteric traditions describe multiple worlds or planes, each representing different aspects of divine consciousness. Every soul eventually gravitates toward realms matching its vibrational signature, its capacity for love, its spiritual development. Have you noticed how different people seem to live in completely different worlds, even while sharing the same physical space? Some consciousness perceives beauty everywhere, others see only threat and scarcity. What frequency is your awareness tuned to right now? Tonight, practice shifting the channel of your consciousness through meditation, prayer, or quiet attention. Notice how the same awareness that focuses on physical sensations can also tune into subtler frequencies. You're developing the skill your soul will use to navigate other dimensions. Death isn't an ending, but a graduation. Consciousness finally free to explore the infinite classrooms of existence. 3 months after her mother died, Elena dreamed of sharing tea in their old kitchen, tea that tasted more real than any beverage she'd experienced in waking life. Her mother looked radiant, wearing a dress Elena had never seen but somehow recognized. "Everything I couldn't say while fighting the pain," her mother whispered, "I'm saying now through the love you feel washing through your heart." Robert's wife had collected owl figurines throughout their marriage. After her death, owls began appearing everywhere he went, perched outside office windows in magazines that fell open to relevant pages. Even a children's book someone left on the bus seat beside him on their anniversary. Dr. Louis Legrand's research reveals that 60–80% of bereaved individuals report contact with deceased loved ones. Dreams provide neutral territory where both consciousness can meet. The departed doesn't need to densify their energy. The living doesn't need to expand beyond current capacity. Released from vocal cords and brain chemistry, consciousness learns to communicate through meaningful coincidence, electromagnetic disturbances, familiar fragrances materializing in impossible places. Pay attention to moments when you suddenly think of someone who has died, especially if accompanied by unusual sensations or synchronicities. Your rational mind may dismiss these experiences, but your heart recognizes the soul's signature in the texture of love that accompanies their memory. Create a sacred space for communion with departed loved ones. A candle, a photograph, a chair where you can sit quietly and simply be available to their presence. Speak to them naturally. Share your daily struggles and joys. Notice how this practice gradually transforms grief into companionship. Love speaks every language, including the ones that require no words. Only the willingness to feel beyond the boundaries of skin and time. Time is a spiral, not a line. What appears to end has only returned to the beginning, transformed. By her husband's first death anniversary, Margaret noticed something fundamental had shifted. Grief remained, but it had transformed from desperate longing into grateful love. She found herself speaking about Tom in present tense again, not from denial, but because his influence felt more alive than ever. Picture seasons returning to their starting point, but at a deeper level. The soul completes its transition like a butterfly finally understanding. It was never actually a caterpillar. The form changed, but the essence simply revealed its true nature. Ancient wisdom traditions recognize this timing intuitively. Jewish mourning observes Yahrzeit. Hindu traditions perform annual Shraddha ceremonies, understanding that departed consciousness continues evolving for a full year before reaching stable spiritual integration. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross noted that grief naturally transforms over approximately 1 year, moving from acute pain toward reorganized attachment, the deceased becoming integrated into the survivor's ongoing life story, rather than frozen as source of trauma. Notice how your relationship with someone who died years ago differs from your connection immediately after their death. The desperate attachment may have transformed into stable inner presence, as if they now exist as part of your own consciousness. This evolution mirrors the soul's journey toward eternal integration. On the anniversary of someone's death, consciously acknowledge how their influence continues shaping your choices, values, and capacity for love. Create a ritual of gratitude, not just for their physical presence, but for the ways their soul continues teaching you how to live more authentically. What seemed like ending reveals itself as transformation. The caterpillar doesn't die when it becomes a butterfly. It fulfills its ultimate potential. Everything changes when you realize this conversation. This moment of receiving these words occurs in the middle of your own dying process, not morbidly but magnificently. Every cell in your body is in constant transition, every breath practice for the final exhalation, every relationship preparation for ultimate release. James began ending each day asking, "If I died tonight, what would my soul feel when experiencing how my presence affected everyone I encountered today?" The practice didn't make him perfect, but it made him aware, and awareness is the beginning of love. Understanding the soul's post-death experience of feeling every emotion it caused others illuminates how we might live more consciously now. Every word becomes choice, every interaction an opportunity to contribute healing rather than harm to collective human experience. When we grasp that consciousness continues eternally, while opportunities for physical expression are limited, every ordinary moment becomes extraordinary. Washing dishes becomes meditation, conversation becomes communion, breathing becomes prayer. What conversations are you avoiding? What forgiveness are you withholding? What love are you postponing until it feels safe or convenient? The soul's perspective reveals that safety and convenience are illusions. Only love remains real across all dimensions of existence. Notice the quality of energy you bring into rooms, conversations, relationships. Your consciousness is constantly affecting other consciousness, creating ripples extending far beyond awareness. Death's review simply makes these impacts visible. Tonight, lie in bed and consciously practice dying. Relax every muscle, slow every breath. Imagine consciousness gently pulling away from physical sensations while maintaining awareness. Feel the peace that comes from letting go while staying present. You're rehearsing for the ultimate performance, and every rehearsal is also a reminder of your eternal nature. The soul that learns to die before death, releasing attachment while deepening love, discovers it was never truly alive until it stopped fearing the ultimate transformation. Death is not the opposite of life. Death is life finally taking off its mask and revealing the face that was always there, luminous, eternal, more beautiful than anything flesh could ever contain. You came from mystery and return to mystery, but mystery isn't unknowing. Mystery is knowing too much for words. Your soul remembers what your mind forgot. You're not visiting this universe. You are the universe visiting itself through the window of your temporary form. Every ending is beginning wearing different clothing. Every death is birth into larger life. Every goodbye is actually hello to what was always true. Love is the only thing real, and love never dies. It just learns new ways to express itself through infinite forms of consciousness, exploring the endless mystery of existence. When your time comes to release this beautiful temporary form, may you die like a song that has been sung completely. Nothing held back, nothing unexpressed. The final note resonating perfectly into eternal silence that holds all music. Place your hand on your heart one final time and feel the rhythm that connects you to every soul who has ever made this sacred journey. You're not alone in this. You never were. In the silence that follows these words, share one way this understanding changes how you choose to live, not as intellectual exercise, but as sacred commitment to honoring both your mortality and your immortality. The soul knows There is no death, only transformation. There is no ending, only expansion. There is no goodbye, only until we meet again, in forms we cannot yet imagine but will surely recognize when love calls us home.